I've been asked quite often here lately, what is the difference between our REDNECKS PRIDE OUTDOORS Pro cable restraint and our standard cable restraint. So I'm going to do a short video right here to describe or define what our Pro CR is, and then I'll do another video at some point showing our standard. What I have here today would be considered our 60-inch Pro BFCC. Okay, that would be beaver, bobcat, fox, coon, and coyote cable restraint. What makes them different would be, number one, first thing right off the get-go, you're going to see we have a loop here. Now, I'm going to explain why that loop is there. When we first originally came up with this design, it was geared for the ADC field, where we had to go in and we had to snare groundhogs, raccoons, foxes, whatever, in somebody's yard and close to houses. Okay, and here in New Jersey, this is the main tool that we use, so we're quite comfortable using cable restraints, if you understand what's going on. So one of the problems we had 20 years ago or whatever was, I'd catch a groundhog or a raccoon and I can't kill it in the backyard, obviously. So I needed a way to put it into a snare pole, put it into a cage trap, and take it away. Anybody who's been snaring for any amount of time knows that that's easier said than done when you got an animal trying to bite on you, scratch on you, and do whatever else on you. Okay, so we got the idea of the loop. Now the loop at that point was put in there so I could easily find where I needed to cut this loop off that animal. All right, with an animal fussing and fighting, you've got to cut between here and here. You can't cut back here. So you got to cut between here and here to take the animal out of the snare and turn it loose, or to cable restraint, I'm sorry, and turn it loose or put it in a cage trap. Okay, the loop gave me that simplicity, if you will, to where all I had to do was just find that loop, cut the loop top or bottom of that loop, and I knew I had the whole cable restraint still there. So if I let the animal go, I would just simply take the pole snare off of him or let him go out of my hands. And with this or this caught, if I was letting the animal go, okay, when it hit the end of that cable, bing, it would act like a breakaway. If you're a calf roper, you know exactly what a breakaway is. That's what gave me the idea, actually. Okay. As we started making them, we found out another thing that was important that I didn't think of when I did it, and that was the movement. There is no binding up here. Okay, you've got a free moving situation here that if you get on the typical restraint with a good bend on it or gooseneck on it, if the bend is not quite right, you're going to get a lot of wedge. Okay, you're going to get a lot of hesitation. You're going to get a lot of fighting on it. So what we found is this has twofold. This loop has movement, okay, in the lock, so you have less wedge on the startup, and two, you can find and cut the animal loose easier. Obviously, we have our deer stop right here, okay, on our cable restraints. Oh, I'll go back and say that if you need a breakaway, it's simply put the breakaway on the lock, put the breakaway on the loop, and it works even easier at that point. New Jersey, we don't need, this is a New Jersey legal cable restraint, so we don't need a breakaway. But if you have a state that you need your breakaway, we can put them on there. Okay. Our deer stop for New Jersey, we're at 6 inches, but we're 2-inch diameter loop at the end. Most states are 2.5 or 3. We can put the deer stop wherever that needs to be. Okay. The next thing that separates our Pro series, whether it's going to be the GFC or the BFCC, okay, is we install an inline loop or inline swivel. And the reason we install this inline swivel is We want this swivel as close to that animal as possible. That way we don't get a fouled swivel. When you put a swivel at the end, it's going to foul. It's going to stop swiveling. And at that point, whatever way that animal's flipping, this cable is going to either wrap tight and start to kink up, or he's flipping against the wrap, it's going to open up the strands and it's going to weaken the system. So we found that by adding that inline swivel as close to the animal as we can, this gives you hours and hours and hours of animals flipping, tossing, doing whatever, and we don't see the fur damage. Okay, for you fur trappers, we don't see the fur damage that you do in a swivel at the end. That gets fouled. All right? And then on our Pro model, we're going to have from the swivel down to the end, whatever length you want for your extension. For example, this is a 60-inch. So for our BFCC Pro model, we're going to have 40 inches of cable. This is a 3/32 1x19, but most guys will order the 5/64 1x19, or we can do 3/32 or 5/64 7x7, whatever you want. Okay, it'd be the inline swivel, and then for the 60-inch, this is 40 inches. Our GFC is going to be 30 inches. So this here on our BFCC is going to be a little bit bigger than an 11-inch loop. On our groundhog, fox, and coon snare, okay, or cable restraint, it's going to be 30 inches of cable, which is going to give you roughly around an 8-inch loop before the swivel. Okay, and then for the 60-inch loop on this one, you got 40 inches of this, and then we're adding 20 inches of your extension. If you want a 72-inch snare or cable restraint, you're going to be 32 inches of extension. Okay. So hopefully I've described this. This is our standard load. It's a round. We also have we have a Pro load, standard load, which is going to be a little bit more oblong. Okay. And then we can add what we can call the double load, which is what I came up and getting out there. Nobody knows anything about it, but we offer the double load. One more thing I want to tell you about our Pro models on these systems. These are loaded for the lock to be 1 and 10. Okay? Now you're probably looking at me and see, that's my 1, but that's probably your 10, but it don't matter. 1 o'clock and 10 o'clock. We don't want them on the 2 o'clock, or the 2 o'clock, and we don't want them on the 10 o'clock. We want them on the 1. That way you can get a lot of wind blowing, you can get a lot of brush bys, it's still staying put, but then when the animal comes through, it fires right down. Okay? The only thing you'll see with the standard load is if you're dealing with animals, what we call the downward fire, sometimes it will fetch up, but we try to put our load in there even with our standard to get you a downward fire. Okay? Hopefully this explained our Pro model for you. If you're interested in our Pro cable restraints, just go on the website, take a look at them. Again, this one is a 3/32, but you can get it in 3/32, 5/64, both in 1x19, or you can get it in 7x7, whatever you choose. All right? See you later. Rednecks Pride Outdoors.